Ladies and gentlemen, in just a few hours from now, the world will be watching Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Donald Trump sit down for a highly anticipated bilateral meeting, their first since both leaders returned to power. The stakes are high and all eyes are on the discussions ahead. What hot topics will take center stage? Will the thorny issue of tariffs be a sticky point in this crucial dialogue? To help us dive deeper into what we can expect from this big anticipated meeting, we're joined by John Bolton. He's the former national security advisor who closely shadowed Trump during his first term. Thank you very much, Mr. John Bolton, for joining me on the News Hour. Anticipation very high, not just in India, but across the world. But how do you see the upcoming meeting between President Trump and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, given the body language, the camaraderie, the howdy Modi and Ab Ki Baar Trump Sarkar that has resonated in the world's ears over the past several years? How do you see this meeting now that is scheduled to look at some of the vexed issues that really are standing tall in front of the world?
Well, I think it's a very important meeting. It's one of the earliest meetings that President Trump has had with another head of state, and in the first month of his presidency. So I think it's a mark of how important the India-U.S. relationship is on a wide variety of fronts. And I think their discussion will be very wide ranging. I certainly hope that's right on not just economic issues, not just these tariff questions that you mentioned, but across the board on the political and military issues and what confronts us in the Indo-Pacific generally. So a lot to talk about. They'll have a private dinner after the meeting this afternoon in Washington. And as you say, everybody will be waiting to hear what the outcome is. I do think that the personal relationship between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump is very good. It was excellent in President Trump's first term, and every reason to think it will continue.
Well, let me also ask you, we're talking on a day when President Donald Trump has spoken about this being a big day for reciprocal tariffs. What does he mean? Is he sending a message to the Indian Prime Minister given the differences between tariffs on both sides?
Well, it's everybody's waiting to see what Trump really means by reciprocal tariffs. He's surrounded by advisors who think that the United States has been treated unfairly by everybody in the world, friends, adversaries, you name it, on the subject of tariff. Several of them are simply obsessed with it. So it could be that the reciprocal tariffs are tailored to each country. And there have been discussions going back to Trump's first term on this question of not just the tariff regimes of India and the United States, but the regulatory regimes that affect the marketability of imports from one country to another and issues of subsidies. Very complicated, very technical in some respects. I think the way to handle it is to say, number one, this is something that experts should really handle, not the heads of state. But number two, the biggest problem in the international trade arena today is China. It's China that's got huge surpluses of steel and aluminum that it's dumping into international markets. China that steals the intellectual property of other industrial countries around the world, and by engaging in a lot of tactics under the Belt and Road Initiative to gain financial advantage. Really, I think friends should get together to deal with this common problem of China's abuses and not be fighting with each other. And sort of overall, I just hope the tariff question doesn't obscure the bigger strategic questions that we face in the Indo-Pacific. I'm not saying trade and economics aren't important. Obviously they are. But one of the things that happened in Trump's first term was the growth of the Quad, the effort led by then Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, but Japan India, Australia, and the U.S. I hope they spend a lot of time on that too.
Mr. Bolton, you said it yourself, but let me just ask you, given what you've seen in terms of chemistry between these two leaders, India is at the cusp of getting and taking off to the economic high table. Tariff is an important issue for India. Do you see President Trump making any concessions here for India as a good friend, and as you said, as global concerns really are very common between the United States and India? Or do you think Make America Great Again will overshadow any leniency on the tariff score?
Well, I'm very worried about how determined Trump is on this tariff issue. He thinks that it will raise a lot of money for the U.S. Treasury, and he operates under the misapprehension that actually foreigners pay the tariffs when they don't. The tariff is paid by the American importer when the goods come into our country, and then usually passed on by the importer to the ultimate consumer. So it's a hidden tax on Americans. That's something Trump doesn't understand. I mean, if I thought tariffs were free to the United States, I might have a different view of them as well. I think the key point is that tariffs have to fit into a bigger strategic picture. They raise important issues for citizens, consumers, and businesses in both countries. There's no getting around that fact. But the disagreements that inevitably arise when there's increasing trade and investment between two large countries should not get in the way of the even bigger strategic picture of how to deal with China's hegemonic aspirations along its periphery. So that's one reason the Quad was a useful formulation, because with four countries you could really focus on the strategic issues, not just on bilateral trade. And I think the Prime Minister will potentially have a tough job trying to get Trump to talk about something other than tariffs. I wish him good luck, because I do think there are bigger issues in play here.
Absolutely, bigger issues at play. So convergence on, the operations run by China, and US and India interests really align on that one. What do you expect to happen on that front?
Well, I think there ought to be discussions about the threat that China poses. We can see in East Asia they're now engaging in air and maritime penetrations of the Japanese home island space, not just on the Senkaku Islands. The threat to Taiwan, I think everybody's familiar with. The efforts of China in the South China Sea, which are very, very dangerous. And then obviously the threat along its many borders in Asia, and particularly along the line of control between India and China, where although there have been efforts to reduce tensions, those tensions have flared up for many, many years. So it's a position that I think people in the United States can understand, that India really is on the front line with China. And I think that's something that the two countries could profitably spend a lot of time discussing.
You've seen a lot of developments coming out of, USAID and all the controversy surrounding that. Let me ask you, Mr. Bolton, has USAID been misused? For instance, a former US official, Mike Benz, has said that it was involved in influencing India's 2019 elections against Prime Minister Modi. He's also said that US agencies influence social media platforms to suppress nationalist political movements, including the ruling party in India. Isn't this a concern that could come up in the talks today?
Well, if USAID in fact did that, that would be very serious and unacceptable. I don't think we've seen evidence of that presented. We've heard that accusation, and it would be understandable if Prime Minister Modi wanted to know what the truth was and what the actual evidence was. I'm an alumnus of USAID. I think it can do very important work around the world and has done a lot of important work. but it's a question of making sure that it stays within its mandate and it's spending money effectively and not wasting it. So I think anybody who wants a accountability for their tax dollars should be concerned about it. But by the same token, you have to be responsible in evaluating what AID is actually doing. So I'm personally I'm perfectly willing to look at the evidence. We just haven't seen it yet.
So let me also ask you, even as we speak about China, how does DeepSeek change the dynamics of the tech battle between the United States and China, and where does India fit into the picture here?
Well, I think there may be less there than meets the eye. There's some question of how much of what DeepSeek was able to accomplish they stole from American firms or misused licenses that they were given. But if they found a cheaper way to do advances in artificial intelligence and challenge the existing models, I think that's part of competition. I'm more optimistic over the long term for the United States because it's a free country. It rewards freedom and creativity. It's not what you get in China. But it's clearly going to be important, and I think security in cyberspace more broadly is going to be increasingly important. So that is an area I think where there's considerable room for cooperative activity between India and the U.S.
Let me also ask you, an important issue is the issue of the war between Russia and Ukraine. President Trump had talks with both President Putin and Zelensky yesterday. How do you see Trump responding to what is India's stance on the conflict? I ask you this because many people believe that the United States would have to push the envelope on getting peace on the table, given the fact that United States has been questioned on the manner this entire conflagration has been handled.
Well, the war started with Russia's unprovoked aggression against Ukraine, which when the Soviet Union broke up, became a fully independent country. And I would say what Trump and Defense Secretary Hegseth said yesterday presented the outlines of a plan that was very favorable toward Russia. I think that was a mistake. We'll have to see how it plays out, but I think this is something that is going to be very difficult for countries in Europe, particularly Central and Eastern Europe, and something that the Russians will see to their advantage.
So let me also ask you, many people across the world wonder about the friendship between Elon Musk and President Trump. How do you see this friendship as far as decision making is concerned, future policy is concerned, and what do you think really transpired and why did Vivek Ramaswamy walk out of the DOGE, much touted and much acclaimed effort on increasing government efficiency? Why did he walk out?
Well, as best I can tell from an outside observer's perspective, I think Musk and Ramaswamy just had a very different idea what the DOGE or Doge effort was supposed to be. They obviously had their differences in the past, and while they tried to cover them over, perhaps that didn't work. I don't know how long the Trump-Musk relationship is going to work. Both are very transactional. I think Musk has a lot at stake with the amount of production for Tesla done in China, a potential real target of tariffs. His companies do a lot of work with the federal government, so I think that's what he has in mind. Trump has given him a pretty free rein in his looking into various government departments. Some observers in Washington have said Musk is functioning as a heat shield for Trump. He's taking the heat and Trump is escaping the criticism. So right now, for various different reasons, it's beneficial to both Trump and Musk. But I certainly don't think it will last forever, and it probably won't last much longer.
Well, that seems a prophecy that will have to be watched very, very closely. But in the end, I want to ask you, Modi-Trump meeting, your takeaway? Is it going to furthering ties between United States of America and India, or do you think it's too early to wager a bet on that?
Well, I think it's very important that the two countries work more closely together. So I believe that Prime Minister Modi believes that. I hope that's what Trump believes. I hope they don't get hung up on the tariff question. I hope they can make progress today. As you say, it is just the first meeting, but it would be very positive if they could announce areas in security in particular where we're going to work more closely together going forward.
Well, on that note, thank you very much, John Bolton, for joining me on the Newshour tonight. Indians would be very, very happily looking into the insights that you give us on what's really happening in the United States and how it could impact Prime Minister Modi's meeting with US President Trump. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks again for having me.